Hello, BookTube. I'm back with another shelf of my library tour for 2023. To judge by the response that I've had, I always forget how popular library tours are. I don't know why I would forget that, considering how popular they are for me to watch. So we're going to continue. I don't know if this will be every day, but I will do my best since we have a lot of books to get through. And we are on, I don't specifically want to concentrate on the numbers here, but we're very, very early days here. So let's do another shelf. The first book is Burke Boyce's novel Man from Mount Vernon, which is a historical novel from the 1960s. Is that right? The 1960s? 1961. A historical novel from 1961 about George Washington and his world, his politics, and his military triumphs and whatnot. It's really, really good considering how bad Washington writing, fiction or nonfiction, usually is. This is not only better than the rest of that, which is not saying much, it's also fantastic in its own right. I wonder if we have time on these library tours for me to read you the beginning. Let me read you just a bit of the beginning. Maybe it'll come through. Maybe not. Maybe it's a cumulative thing. He had been in the saddle since pre-dawn at 4 o'clock, riding through limpid gray and the sun's slow lifting, making the rounds of the fields of the home plantation and the field hands and fishing wharf and sorting sheds, the young tobacco plants that stitched parallel lines in the long acres between fence rows, and the small, jaunty, sprouted wheat, seeing for himself the work in hand and what was likely to get done that day. The rounds were completed now, hours after reining in an alternate trot and walk, and he turned the head of his chestnut mare toward the house. The sun was well above the horizon, sugary over the tidewater miles, a blob of honey, and a bountiful soundlessness ran on and on. The mare tossed her nose, playing at the bit, well knowing the custom of this daily ride. He patted her neck. There, Betsy, have your canter. It would be canter, not gallop. He prized his horses too much to gallop them unless needful. The spurs he wore in his big boots were seldom used. Slackening reins, he set himself practically for the mare's rollick, gather and swing. At that moment he caught sight of the poacher. The man was crouched on the near side of a rail fence down a little slope toward Dogue Run, the fence at his back and a weave of honeysuckle vines at either side of him. The man knew he'd been seen. He was gripping a fowling piece. A pressure of knees, a curt word, a tightening of leather brought Betsy to a halt, dancing. In the next moment he saw Jack. The young fellow, afoot, out for an idle after-breakfast ramble probably, stood something to the right of the poacher and partway down the slope, hesitating, obviously trying to decide between ordering the man off the place and the menacing of the fowling piece and the poacher's snarl. The pair of them were checked, each on his spot, frozen as in a tableau. The desperateness spoke from one and the irresolution from the other. Jack was his stepson, Jack Custis, turning 20. Jack would be unarmed, of course. So was he himself. To carry weapons on secure lands had for half a century been an absurdity. But one of his giant rages took hold of him. He felt it flaming up. Poaching was plain thievery. There were laws against it. This man was a sneak, a burglar of game, a petty killer caught and daring to threaten Jack. Betsy mare spun at his touch, and he pricked spur for once, lengthening her to a rushing gallop down the slope. Her hoofs drummed like quick heartbeats, guided and steadied by his balanced sureness that made the force of his body one with hers. Together they arrowed down at the poacher. The man faced them in a paralysis of disbelief, raising his gun, lowering it again, and crouching deeper. The stubbled chin dropped the mouth gaping. Betsy swept him past Jack. He heard the shout, "Papa, he'll shoot you." He kept headlong on. Now he was at the poacher. He swerved to the side of him, pulling Betsy to her haunches. In the blur of his rage he had a glimpse of ugliness, made more ugly by a fumbling terror, a too-late franticness of the thumb to find and cock the gun's hammer. Then his arm swooped, and his hand took the man by the slack of the shirt front like the plucking of a weed and hoisted him off the ground. Instinctively, without gritting or strain, for hand and arm could heave a folded camp tent of 2 militiamen would have had trouble struggling with. Another spur to Betsy, a surge to the fence, and the poacher was heaved and went sprawling over. He dropped like a live Indian from Betsy's back and vaulted over after him. That is the opening scene. That's not a Washington we see often in historical fiction or in biography. It reflects two aspects of reality accurately, and one aspect of reality maybe not so accurately. I don't think it's all that accurate to say that Washington would have been galvanized by any threat to Jack Custis. But two aspects that are reflected perfectly are Washington's propensity for mind-wiping rage, which he fought with his whole life, and also his supernatural strength. He was supernaturally physically strong. Even late in life, he could do feats of strength. He didn't brag about it. He didn't make any show of it. But it was, for some reason, true. And the book goes on from there. It deals with the complexity of General Gates and the political challenges to Washington. It's just fantastic. What is the next one that we have? Oh, okay. All right. This is Tribes with Flags by Charlie Glass, with a thoughtful portrait of our author on the cover. I wish that I could find this. I've had this in hardcover before, and I always manage to send it away to somebody. This is the author's travels in Arabia and meetings with all kinds of people and interviews and local color, and it's all really, really well done. He's still working today. For a long time, he and I were writing together at the National in Abu Dhabi. He's really, really talented. So the book is a keeper, even though I would say probably 90% of the facts on the ground have changed. Then, okay. All right, this is part 2. I have mentioned this just recently on this channel. I want part 1 in paperback. I just haven't found it yet at the Brattle, and I'm not going to pay $25 for a paperback. Thank you very much. This is The American People by Larry Kramer. This is volume 2, The Brutality of Fact. And I would like volume 1 as well in paperback, and the reason I want the paperbacks, I admit, is because I'm blurbed on them. But in this case, it's not the usual puling egotism. It's that these two books mean a lot to me for a whole bunch of reasons, not all of which we have to get into in this video. The idea that after all this time and all of these different twists and turns of the narrative, my narrative, Larry's narrative, that I would reach a point in life where I would be able to review these books. I'm not putting it well, but these are two parts of an enormous historical, fictional quasi-history of America, pre and post-AIDS. And volume 2 is an AIDS novel, and it's incredible, just incredible. It's dark and savage, just beautiful, just a beautiful, beautiful, strange, unlikable book. And I'm blurbed on the back. There you have yours truly. I'm blurbed with Dwight Garner, and in our review blurbs, our reviews read very much the same. We did not collude on those reviews. Our reviews read very much the same, and our blurbs sound very much the same. You expect that the blurb on the back of a book, on a paperback, will be unmixed praise, right? That's why the publisher will pick it, because that's what it means to blurb something. Almost, it's synonymous with this is a tagline of praise. This is hype for the book, and neither Dwight nor I could bring ourselves to do that in our reviews. And the publisher, God bless them, they decided this is Picador. They decided better to have those blurbs there and reflecting the nature of the reading experience than to find somebody somewhere who's just making multiple exclamation points. So my own blurb is, this is the greatest, most alarming, most insane AIDS novel anybody is ever going to write or want to write. Larry Kramer himself is fiercely present on virtually every page of the book, reminding readers that he's been yelling at them for half a century. The book is a whiteout blizzard of anger, outrage, showboating, and satire. And absent my surrounding contextual comments in this video, you wouldn't know that that was praise. I'm not sure that it is entirely praise, and Dwight is the same way. His blurb is, if both volumes of The American People were the only books left behind by our species, and alien people who discovered them would, at the very least, really know that we had been here. Beautiful and humane. It's the journal of a plague century. I can't say I liked it, Yet on a certain level, I loved it. And that is true. That is absolutely, well, Dwight Garner's not going to lie to his readers, and neither am I. So it would be true anyway. But in this case, that reflects the reality of reading this thing. It's the kind of book that I find harder and harder to believe ever gets published in the 21st century, where it's all about the vibes. But what is this? Oh, okay, great. This next one is a kid's graphic novel adaptation of Dracula with very manga-esque artwork there. But I loved it. It's very cartoony, but I thought it was fantastic. As an adaptation of Dracula, I thought it was fantastic. I think that I reviewed it. I guess that's going to be a Brides of Dracula. There they are, with Jonathan Harker. I guess maybe it'll be a theme of these library tours that I include links to any writing of mine. I seem to remember that the last time I did this, I did that, and a lot of you liked that when I linked to writing of mine. I've written about, I think, everything that we've mentioned so far in one way or another. I guess I could go looking for all of that. That would tend to make these video uploads a lot more work, and I don't like them to be that. I know that sounds terrible, but I don't like them to be that, because then I'm less likely to do them. But I'll think about it. I'll give it a try and see. I'll do it for this video, and we'll see where we go. What is this thing? Oh, I recognize that face on the back. Oh, okay. All right, great. This is a novel by our very own Britta Bowler. That's not her on the cover. That's an actual painting on the cover. This is a novel about a seemingly ordinary, mild-mannered guy who is drawn into the world of art restitution, restoring artwork to previous owners, or verifying its provenance. He's drawn into that world by a larger-than-life figure, a larger-than-life couple, that the reader distrusts them before the main character does. It's slow, it's cerebral, it's multi-layered, as you can tell from the title. The title doesn't just mean the right attitude. It also means the right way to do things, and even painting-wise, the right angle. It's a complex, cerebral work. I think, in my opinion, I haven't spoken with its author about it, but in my opinion, it's about the danger of truth. The main character suffers in this book, I would say, because of truth, not in the cause of truth. I wouldn't say he's quite that strong, but because of truth. It's, again, like with the Larry Kramer book, it's the kind of book that I don't imagine gets published anymore, except every once in a while it does. It's very, predictably enough for this author, it's very Thomas Mann. It's a great big gigawatt brain exploring some things in the language and wardrobe of fiction. Of course, Britta has written fiction and nonfiction, and her next book, I believe, will make her a star. Or none of her books have so far, but I believe that, well, comparatively speaking, a star. I don't have a publisher that I can go to with my latest manuscript. I don't think you do either. She does, but it's not an aspect that she stresses on her own BookTube channel. Nevertheless, her next book, she is in the perfect position to write it, and it is the perfect historical moment for it to get written, and all of those things bode well for it breaking into the English language, specifically American book market. We hate to say it, but if you don't make a hit in the American book market, you're not really going to make a hit in the English-speaking world. The only obstacle in the way, it's a great framework for a book. It's the perfect time for a book. Britta is the perfect person to write the book. The only thing in the way, the actual writing. My bête noire. But we'll see what we can do. All right. Well, or on a booktube trend here. This next one is a horror tube anthology. This is Served Cold, which I wrote. This was created by Regina St. Clair, who has a booktube channel, a wonderful booktube channel, and this is just 24 horror short stories set around a theme of cold, written by a whole bunch of booktubers. There's Cam Wolf, Wolfshot, used to be Wolfshot Publishing, now I think he's Page Nomad. There's Cameron Chaney, and a whole bunch of other people, including me. I wrote the foreword to this book, but I also wrote a short story in here. For the first time in a decade, I published a short story under my own name. My story in here is called The Cold Traps, and is set on the moon, which is the one commonality with the last story that I wrote 10 years ago, which was also obsessed with the moon. I am obsessed with Earth's moon. I think it's absolutely fascinating. I can't get enough of it. Served Cold is available still on Amazon if you have somehow missed the boat. You get lots and lots of terrific horror stories here. I wrote the foreword to the book, and you also get a short story by me for those of you who are into, I guess, the weirdest kind of collectability in the world. I don't do it often. Who knows when I'll do it again? All right. This next one was a hoot. It was utterly impossible to convince any editor to take a review of this book, but I loved it. This is by Heather Montgomery, and it's called Something Rotten. It's a fresh look at roadkill, how it gets there, what to do about it, how it's removed, even how to eat it. There are plenty of people who eat roadkill. There's even a thriving community. There may be more than one community. There are all sorts of tips here about animals that are almost but not quite roadkill, what to do. Do you approach? The answer is almost always no, you do not approach. One exception to that comes up in this book, comes up on all sorts of tutorials, is if you are driving down a country road or whatever, in other words, it's not dangerous for you to stop, and you see a possum, an American marsupial, a possum, lying by the side of the road, pull over and check, because although the mother is dead, she may have a pouch full of little ones that are alive. That happens often. If you check, if it's the right time of year, you might be able to save a whole litter of possum kits. And maybe you'd want to do that. Maybe there's a rescue organization in your neighborhood. Let's see here. Oh, this next one is this is the Oxford Book of Letters. The guest editor here is Frank and Ernita Kermode. Did this big, beautiful thing. I go back to this all the time. The Oxford had a whole series of these. The Oxford Book of the Sea, adventure stories, death, friendship, that sort of thing. And I've had virtually all of them at one point or another. Only a few of them have actually stuck with me. This one I have kept because it's just so good. It's just so well done, so well chosen. And maybe another element of why I've kept this one is that it's historical. People still write adventure stories. People still write things about friendship, but no one writes letters anymore. Snail mail letters. Those of you who were born in this century may even wonder what's going on the cover there. That woman has just written a letter and she is licking the envelope. She's going to put a paper letter inside an envelope and trust it to the mail. And then wait for a response to come in the mail, delivered to her. Where someone does that exact same thing in reverse. And I did this for decades. I was an absolutely avid letter writer. Avid. Every day at my desk, at my father's old desk, every day, I had 2 piles of correspondence, and I would do the correspondence before I do anything else. One pile of correspondence was just official. Fill out a form, write out a check, that sort of thing. And the other pile of correspondence was personal. And that was somebody that I barely know who wrote me a quick line. They get a quick line in response. Somebody that I know a little bit better, or I'm getting to know, they wrote me a longer letter, they get a longer letter. Somebody I know really well who writes long, involved letters, they get a long, involved letter. And all the key for me to make that smooth was that all of the appurtenances of letter writing were there already. There were stamped, addressed envelopes already. There was a roll of stamps there already. There was a stack of empty envelopes there already. It was all the paper. All of it was ready ahead of time. All I had to do was generate the prose. And all of that's gone. There wasn't a day when there wasn't a day that mail got delivered when I wasn't eagerly waiting for correspondence from someone, because you did the mental calculation in your brain of when you were going to get a response from so-and-so, knowing how long it would take to get to them, how long they were likely to take to write a response, and how long it would take to get back to you. That used to be real. I know some of you are young enough so that you won't be able to conceive it in the age of email, and I love email. Everybody who wrote letters in this book, everybody whose letters are anthologized here, dreamed of a day when a letter could get to its recipient immediately, and the response could come immediately. They dreamed of that. But there was also a kind of joy in doing this. It was far more personal than email. First of all, you got pages that were written by someone. You could see that they had written. you could tell that you knew that they had touched that page, and that they'd gone to the bother of preparing the envelope, and that they'd taken the envelope somewhere to mail it. There was a far more personal involved element, a material element involved. And that's all gone. I was so invested in that world, and it disappeared. Once email happened, once the internet happened, suddenly everybody that I corresponded with had email. I could just email them what I wanted to do, what I wanted to talk about, long or short, with pictures. So it went away, and that adds to the element of this, adds to the specialness of it. And then we'll finish up with this last one. What is this last one? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. This is a great book. This is The Woman at the Washington Zoo, a collection of the writings of Marjorie Williams, who was a writer with the Washington Post. She was a writer with Vanity Fair. She did political profiles during some pretty volatile political years in Washington, and was great at it. She got people to agree to be interviewed by her, even though they all knew what her interview style was like and how forensically they were going to be dissected when she wrote the interview up into a piece of narrative. They did it anyway. And as a result, she opened doors, she opened little windows, little keyholes into Washington power politics that no one else at the time, or before or since, has really duplicated. Some people come close, but she was so good at it, just so good at it. And a lot of those pieces are collected here. And then she got sick. She was diagnosed with cancer. And like all true blue writers, she wrote about it. What else are you going to do? That was actually a common phrase of hers. What else are you going to do? And there was no hope. After a while, there was no hope, and she knew that. And she wrote about that too. And then there was something that unfolded in her mind, that because there was no hope, time was going to go on without her. Everything was going to go on without her. Believe me, when you get a cancer diagnosis, you think that everything's just going to go on without you. It's not going to stop. You're going to stop. But everything else is going to go on, including all the people that you love. They're all going to go on. And they're not going to walk around bent over. They're going to be severely hurt by losing you, and then they're going to slowly but surely, steadily recover. That wound is going to close over and heal, as it should. As it should. As all of yours did, for all the loved ones that you lost before then. You're going to be one of those people. That reality really dawned on her. And she wrote about that as well, including in a piece of nonfiction. I think it's the last piece in this collection. It's called The Halloween of My Dreams. Yeah, it's the last piece in this collection, and it will make you bawl your eyes out. It's the best thing she ever wrote. This is a great volume. If you see it in your little free library or your used bookstore, give it a try. Even if you don't know anything about American politics or American politics of the 80s and 90s, give it a try anyway. I bet you'll enjoy the company of this writer. Boy, oh boy. Well, this was a roller coaster ride emotionally of a shelf. All right, but that's it. That's it. We're done with this shelf. Here's hoping they don't all take this long. This is fewer than $10. Uh, we'll wrap this up here, and we'll see what you think of it, and then I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.